Hey folks, so today we are going to go ahead and dive into our first film, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and our first auteur, Edgar Wright. So those of you who took film one are already familiar, hopefully, with the term auteur, but we'll go ahead and review that for those of you who came late or who have slept since then. So an auteur is a director who controls all aspects of production. That doesn't necessarily mean that they do the editing or the cinematography, but they have a hand in everything in the movie. And that leads to a strong personal style or kind of a fingerprint. Like if you're watching a Kubrick film or a Wes Anderson film, you tend to know that you're watching it based on those trademarks of theirs. So some auteurs that we studied in film one: Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Stanley Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock, Orson Welles, Frank Capra. Those are all auteurs that we looked at in film one. Auteurs that we're going to look at this year, there are a couple that overlap, but we're going to look at Edgar Wright, our first auteur, Wes Anderson, Wong Kar-wai, Kubrick again, Akira Kurosawa, Ingmar Bergman, all of those folks. So, Edgar Wright is a British director, and he was extremely popular in Britain, and that then led to a career in Hollywood. So Edgar Wright has a heavily stylized filmmaking style. He uses a lot of fast shortcuts, a lot of whip pans, and this gives his films sort of a sense of movement or kind of frenetic energy. He also incorporates music a lot in his films, especially, one sec. All right, sorry, Armando interrupted me, so rude. So he likes to use music to make jokes or do stuff on the beat of music. So some examples of this, if you've seen Shaun of the Dead, the scene where they're fighting the zombies to Don't Stop Me Now, etc. Edgar Wright uses a lot of visual gags. So we're going to be talking a lot with this film about visual comedy. As you remember, film is a visual medium. We talk about this over and over and over and over and over. So Edgar Wright's a really great director, to look at in terms of someone who really emphasizes visuals to be funny. Most of his films are comedies, but some of them do have an element of drama to them, and some of his other popular films include Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Baby Driver. I don't know why hot is lowercase. That's just Rachel being silly. Okay, so something that Edgar Wright uses a lot, this is something we learned about in film one that I want to return to because we're going to talk about it a lot this year. And that is framing. So framing is how a director and a cinematographer set up a shot to emphasize a particular subject. Often that's a person, sometimes it's an item, but they have intentionally set up a shot either using the camera lens, so maybe center framing, or using the background, or using people, but they are trying to draw your eye to a particular part of the shot. So let's look at some examples of this. All right, so in this shot, Edgar Wright has used framing. He's used the rule of thirds, if you're familiar with photography. But I want you guys to talk about, you can pause me for a quick sec, what is Edgar Wright framing here? And like who or what is the main subject? And what is he trying to show through that framing? All right, pause me. Okay, I hope you're getting a good discussion. Obviously, the correct answer is Simon Pegg's character here on the right. He's along this axis here. We talked about rule of thirds. So if you're not familiar with photography, imagine that this was divided into thirds both ways. Using the rule of thirds means you frame your subject on one of those imaginary lines. So he's here on this third. Oh gosh, we can see Nick Frost in the background looking at him. So that's another way that the director is trying to emphasize that you should be looking at this guy right here. All right, here's another Edgar Wright image from Baby Driver. So who in this picture do you think that Edgar Wright is trying to draw your eye to? Pause me. All right, hopefully you guys said Jamie Foxx's character here in the middle. So Jamie Foxx is dead center in the frame. Additionally, everything around him is very gray or black while he's wearing a very bright red outfit. And these people are kind of looking off or they're zoning out. So the director doesn't necessarily want you to look at them. He's trying to draw your eye right here to the center. Okay, and here is another example of framing from the film we're about to watch, Scott Pilgrim. So this is called center framing, and he's also used rule of thirds here, but horizontally. So they're on the third here, and there's a third above them. So what is Edgar Wright trying to, obviously he's trying to draw your attention to these two people, right? But what emotion do you think he's trying to create using this framing? Go ahead and pause me for a second. Okay, hopefully you guys said something about how they look awkward or uncomfortable. They've got all this blank space above them and around them. So it's really a feeling of like this guy is drowning in his moment that he's trying to hit on this girl. Okay, so we have a video for you to watch. You can pull it up on Canvas, or you can try to watch it if you have the PowerPoint up. Go ahead and watch this video. This is from Every Frame of Painting. We're going to watch a lot of videos from them this year. I love Every Frame of Painting. But this is going to show how Edgar Wright does his visual comedy and the sort of things that we're going to want to look for while we're watching Scott Pilgrim. So go enjoy this video and then come on back. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed taking a look at how Edgar Wright does comedy visually. Dramatic lighting cues, as it mentioned, is a big one. Movement, things being on the beat, etc. Whip pans. I love a good whip pan. Okay, so Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim was released in 2010. God, I can't believe it's been 11 years already. It was directed by Edgar Wright. Stars Michael Cera and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. This film is an adaptation of a graphic novel. The graphic novel series is really good. If you're into comics, I would recommend you read it. Brian Lee O'Malley did a great job. And Edgar Wright uses that visual comedy to really incorporate comics visual style in this film. So you're going to see some traits like sound effects, movement lines, things that are going to emphasize that comic book style. Excuse me. This is also a transmedia piece of art, which means that it incorporates a lot of different kinds of media and art into one form of art. So it brings in references as well as characteristics and that's what I'm looking for, like techniques from video games, music, comic books, other films, etc. And just a cool tidbit, this is just a trivia fact I enjoy. The actors actually learned to play their instruments for this film. That's just something that I like. There's not any, you don't need to know that. It's just cool. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and watch Scott Pilgrim, and this is our unit about love. So as we're watching this film, I do want you to think about the themes of love in this film and how the director explores those visually as well as in the screenplay. Now, I would say don't limit yourself to just thinking about romantic love. All of these films that we're going to watch this unit, they do involve a romantic plotline, but that plotline isn't even necessarily the most important message or plot in terms of love as a theme. Okay. So I hope you guys enjoy. Edgar Wright is one of my favorite directors, although I am very critical of how he writes female characters. So I am interested to see what you guys' opinions are on that in particular. Okay, have fun.